On my way over here today, I had an opportunity to speak with Professor James Small, who was on the show last week. And the subject of fathers came up, and I thought about my father. So before I speak specifically about him, I want to thank all the fathers and give praise to the fathers, people of African ancestry, those men who have endured so much and given so much and corrected so much and suffered so much. I want to thank you. If I could, I'd get down and touch the ground if we were out and touch that soil just to give praise to you. My father, having been born in Alabama, suffered the viciousness of racism at that time, came to Chicago, got married, and fathered 8 children. And I have to thank him for all of those times when I didn't understand what he was going through. I have to thank him for staying. He didn't leave, although times were hard. I was talking in Chicago to Dorothy Tillman on her program, and I was talking about, some people say they're poor, but they didn't know they were poor. We were poor. We knew we were poor. And sometimes on Christmas, I remember one time in particular where we knew Mom and Dad didn't have a cent, and we didn't have a Christmas tree. We didn't have anything that we were supposed to have in Christmas. And went to bed, got up, there was a Christmas tree, and there were some toys to go along with the ceremony of Christmas. And it was Daddy who did that. That's a little thing. He did much more. So, Daddy, you're in me, and I want to thank you for all that you've done. However, there are fathers who are missing their sons who have been murdered by police all over this country. I have to praise them and send love and respect to them for standing up, for insisting on struggle, and not forget it. Don't turn around and look the other way. Sometimes when these kinds of things happen, you see the mother stand up in front of the cameras and talk, but this time the fathers are there, as it should be. So I thank you for your courage and your determination. One last thing. A sister who works for me celebrated the 16th birthday of her daughter. Had a coming out party, 16 years old, whatever. And she was describing the dance that the young people had, and I'm talking about dance because the show is going to be about dance and African culture. We have our special guest to lead us through that. And she was describing the dance. If you're my age or maybe a little younger, we dance for the joy of dancing. It was in Soul Train. Remember the beginning of Soul Train where they were so inventive and doing all kinds of things? There is a beauty and the strength that comes to you when you dance. She described the dance that the young people were doing, and I can only say that it was a dance of butts and joints. The sisters were over with their butts moving, and the brothers were in back. And she said, where are the rest of the dance? That's all the young people were doing. What has happened to our culture? Today we're going to talk about culture. Now you know you have arrived at Ancestor House. Come on inside. Don't bring anything, no hot wings, no cheese, no. Come on inside. We're going to have a family discussion today. I'll see you inside. Come on.
Story is bad. Not to want to know it is worse. But to pass on ignorance to someone is like passing on a curse. And it will curse your father, curse your mother, curse your sister, curse your brother. And every time you come close to one another, it will be there in between to separate. instigate. We must learn and tell our
Yes, we must learn and tell our family story. It's natural for humans to do, you know. And here at Ancestor House, that's what we do. We talk about the greatness of our people. We talk about our weaknesses too, but the greatness of our people. And I don't have my proper equipment here to pour libation today because of certain things that happened. But first, we thank the Mighty One. We thank the power that made us all, that gave us our first dignity as the parents of humanity. And as my God family says, you see, tra, omani aba tra, omani aba tra, omani aba tra. Let the spirit of our ancestors be with us here today. Let it open our hearts and point our tongues, make them loose. Let the spirit come through us, so that everything we say here today is nourished by the water, is heat by the spirit that comes out of my mouth on my breath into the air that is all around us, that we share with nature, and that this water goes into the earth. And what happens in the earth, what we say here today will grow. The wisdom will grow. And so all of us can use it and go on. I want to thank the great Creator for giving us life, Yao. I want to thank the great Creator for giving us ancestors, those bad ones, those tenacious ones, Yao, thank you. Those who brought us this far, Yao. Call out the name of your ancestors at home. Someone who did something, said something, shared something with you. Call out their names. I'm going to call great-grandma Rebecca. Yao, she was the furthest back that we know in our family who was an enslaved person here. She was a spirit woman, and after enslavement, after the Civil War, she was called by her family to come out in her community and speak and help lift their spirits. And most of us have somebody in our family who does that. So call out their names. Thank you, great-grandma Rebecca. I thank my father. I thank all of those national people, those spirit people, those strong people who brought us this far. We thank them. Yao, 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 thank you, thank you, thank you. And let it be known that there are those who do not want us to become our full selves again. And they plot and plan against it. We said, let that plotting and planning go back to them and not come to us. Because we're going to be where we is. We're going to be what we be. And today, to help us be what we be, I have the honor of having here at Ancestor House a brother who has gone very, very deeply into our culture and is going to share some of that with us. And I thank you, brother. If I don't say your name right, don't hit me. Kimati Dinizulu. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, brother, for being here, for doing what you're doing. I have to thank you for going back when I first met your father and his having received the Spirit and creating the organization that he did, and then you coming out of that, going home to the continent, bringing, that's why I say sometimes that the Creator never left us alone, never, always sent us people such as yourself. Now that's all I'm going to say. You're going to introduce your own self.
Well, my name is Nana Kimati Dinizulu. I guess I was introduced to African culture by, both my parents, my mother and my father. I remember some of the earliest memories were when we were living in the projects, in Queensbridge projects.
Oh, yeah.
The first apartment that we lived in was on 116th Street, right across the street from Malcolm, from Temple number 7.
Oh, really? That's in Harlem?
Yes, between 7th and Lenox.
Oh, yes.
That's the first apartment I lived in.
I see.
And my father's mother, Louise Bolden, along with her husband, who was Edward Bolden, who was my father's stepfather, but really his father because he raised my father. She lived there with her mother, who was my father's grandmother, we call Nana Amajeni, and with two of her other children, Robert Williams, who was my father's uncle, who was the bass player for Art Tatum, and also Alberta Bloomer. So there were four generations in there. There was my great-grandmother, who was my father's grandmother, his mother, her brother, her sister, my father, and then later my mother, and then I was, born, the first child that was born there.
I see.
And we stayed there briefly, but I remember my mother was very upset because my father would spend a lot of time across the street talking to Malcolm.
Oh,
And, she would want him to come in, and he would be out there talking and talking and talking. And she would, they would tell me those stories. What caused us to leave, and I even have some documentation where a surgeon from Oyatunji,
yes.
Who was a good friend, we're talking about the rat that was sharing the crib with me. Because, back then the apartments,
Yes. Yeah.
we're not really taking care. We still have that situation in New York. I'm
Yes,
hearing
we do.
also. And so the rat, my mother threatened to leave, and my father found the place in Queensbridge. So my earliest memories really start to develop about when they started the African American Day Parade, which was in River Park, which I find to be very interesting. We're talking about, that is the East River, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So we starting to look at this festival, which was in River Park, would have.
You mean around 145th Street?
No,
that
on
area?
Queensbridge in Long Island City, which has now been redeveloped into an artist community.
I see.
Okay, which now is a major stop on the subway, which wasn't when I was living there. We had Silver Cup Studios there, the Bread Factory, which is now like a Hollywood
Yes, that's
recording
right.
studio.
That's
now.
right. That's right.
So we look at the energy that went on there. Surgeon was performing there. People like Ralph Dorsey, Imrad, and
Ralph
a lot of
Dorsey,
these elders
yes.
were doing this free concert for the people in the projects for years, because my father was teaching at the Jacob Reed Center, which was a community center there.
What
and
was
that's
he
where
teaching?
He was teaching African dance and African drumming. And, then he went to Africa. He took his first trip over to Africa.
How did he, in the middle of Harlem, how did he develop this connection, this African connection? Did Malcolm have something to do with it, or was it
No,
something that
I think he had something to, well, they influenced each other, I think. That's my belief. He was a photographer. He went to school for photography. And some of his clients was people like Alvin Ailey, Joffrey Holder.
Yes.
He shot backstage House of Flowers.
Oh, wow.
He was
This
on
is your
that whole,
father, Nana Opreo
yes.
Dinizulu?
Yes, he shot for magazines. He worked for a white man named Mr. Abbey, who lived in a glass house out on the island. I remember when I was a child going to that house.
A glass house.
He had these friends. Abbey lived in a glass house. He had another white man, Saul Mineroff, who was one of the people who dealt with the Watergate buggings with the tapes. Because, there was a lot of FBI investigation going on with my father and Brinks and that whole thing that was going on. There's a whole deep history. A lot of times people, when they look at drumming and dancing, they don't understand that was a part of what they call the civil and human rights level.
movement, that's
that
right,
was
it
another
was.
way of carrying that was the weapon, the drum. That was the weapon, the dance. The Dinizulu company pretty much always had, or majority of the time, had narration.
That's the difference.
Yes.
That's the difference. It makes a difference if you know what the dance is about.
Right.
And actually what some of the movements are saying, rather than they just dancing.
And it's Pan-African in terms of not just dealing with Guinea. Today you just see nothing but djembe, or maybe you see Saba, dealt with Nigeria, with Ghana, South Africa, Congo. You try to be as diverse as possible in terms of dealing with, our artistic, what they call art, because when you look at Tree, I haven't been able to identify a word for dance or for music.
Serious.
Or for art.
They describe the situation?
It's Adoa. Yeah. Or it's Photofro. It's Kente.
You mean those are the names of the dances?
And the music. It's the name of the thing.
The whole
it's the thing. It's the thing. When you look at the Akan, at Kwesi Adai, with, which is a very important holiday amongst many Akan people, they have a poem that they recite on the male and female drum, on tumpan, which some people say are the principal talking drums of their kind.
We had a brother here who played them and explained to us what he was saying.
And it's balanced because it's a male
and a female. Yes.
and a female.
Yes.
Together. And Ghana has Nana could be male or female. So it's very interesting the importance of the togetherness of the male and the female.
Yes.
And how, you know, I find it very interesting that when they stole and kidnapped and raped us off our continent,
right.
that was one of the things that was attacked, as you know, was our family. And that's one of the hardest things for us, to try to find a way to bring our families back together. And you know, I think whenever you hear a lot of the conversations about how can we get them to pull their pants up, or how can we get them to do this and that, the youth, we have to look at how can we get ourselves to understand that maybe their pants is down for other reasons other than what people think they're down for. Because when you look at what they call like the shokoto, or when you look at the way the Dogbo men have their pants hanging down, it might be that they're being pulled by their ancestors because they're rebels. They're warriors, a lot of the people with their pants down. You understand? But it's a fashion statement also.
Yeah, I don't, it's more rebel than fashion statement. I think when it started, some of these European designers put it on a bus, and then it became like fashion statement and the thing to do. But the brothers coming out of prison or wherever, you know, then it became this is what I'm going to do. But I mean, I want to go into that, but I don't want to go into that.
Okay, yeah, we won't go there.
In a way, it shows how you're trying to fit into somebody else's idea of what you should be. Takes you, how far it takes you away from who you are. Being a female and wearing stockings, I can't even think of the words right now. You pull them up and it's all up here. It's one piece. I think most women that I know have had an opportunity because they were rushing or something to buy some that were too small. And you're rushing and you're going something, you pull them up and the next thing you know it's down here. And you have to walk a certain way and you're trying to get it back up. You know, and I'm looking at these brothers in the street altering their walk in order to keep them up. And I'm saying that really, your head has to be someplace else, and then to surreptitiously pull them up. They have a shirt or something, they'll sneak and pull them up because they know they're going to fall down. Where does that go? Where does that go from when I was growing up, and it was a rite of passage for a young brother to wear long pants. You know, pants were a sign of your manliness, but we've come way from that to this other thing where we really let our butts show. And brother was in the car the other day, leaning in the car, and his pants were really, his whole behind was out. So where is that? Well,
I think that a lot of our youth need to find out more about who they are.
It's that family thing again.
Yeah, and they need to have elders who have their pants up mentally and spiritually.
Yeah.
Because I met a brother who had his pants kind of down the other day in Radio Shack and had a deep conversation with him. So I think that there's a void, and because we don't have our community intact, that they're gonna follow the fashion designers or whoever else, and that's a cartel.
Yeah,
true. those people who design clothes, it's just like it's part of the entertainment industry.
It's a system. It's a business.
Right.
It's a it's a structure. Before I go any further, I want people to get an idea of what you do, because you're a musician, you're a drummer, and you play a variety of instruments, African instruments. And I think, Nat, if you're listening, I think we have something queued up. And we might, internet is something else,
Oh,
YouTube,
God.
YouTube have you all over it. So Nat, if you could play just that first piece so that people can get an idea of the uniqueness of what you do and the skill that's involved in your doing it. What is it called, your approach to drumming?
It depends on what type of drumming I'm playing.
With
the foot drum.
Yeah.
Well, the drum that I play is called gome, which Ga carpenters created that drum.
Really?
While in Central Africa working for a white man by the name of Mr. Jacob, according to some traditions. But I'm interested in foot drum music, period. They have foot drum in Guadeloupe.
Yes.
I was talking to Mino, who used to work with Miles Davis, who's from Guadeloupe, yesterday. They have it in Haiti called Juba. And I learned some of that music from the late Louis Celestine, who worked with Destiny and Charles Moore. He taught me Juba. And also Fishner Augustine, who just passed away. He taught me some Juba also. And that's also music played with the hands and feet. But mostly, very important to, I guess, my tribal background as a black American, African American, is Congo Square. The principal drum that was played for Marie Laveau was played with the hand and feet, called the bambula. So that's the spirit upon which I play.
And
the
Marie
gome.
Laveau was a priestess set at that time in that place.
Very powerful healer.
Wow, and the music that accompanied her and was probably therefore played in Congo Plaza.
In Congo Square,
was part of it.
Was that drum, the bambula. It was a dance too.
Nat, do you have it ready, brother? Okay, that'll be good, so we can give our audience an idea of what it involves.
We need sound out here. No sound, no sound.
What do you mean, no sound? I hear it in there.
No sound. Still no sound. Okay, so to fix it.
Okay, we're going to fix it. We're not going to let this happen because we have to hear this, and it has to start at the beginning because there's an introduction and everything to this. There were other things on when you played double bass with somebody, double bass drum, and there was a foot thing you were doing on the double bass. See, they got you on the internet, on YouTube. So you were introduced to this Goomba.
Oh, the gome, I was introduced to it when I was in Ghana. My first trip went in 1977, stayed till 79, and I studied with some Ga. I studied at the Art Center of Ghana, which was set up by the late, Sajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And at that time, Ghana had 9 regions. It has 10 today. And each of the 9 regions had an art center, and they had people from the various ethnicities, from around Ghana, who were learning, and they were bargaining back and forth with their cultures. For instance, the Ga was sharing with the Ewe, and the Ewe was sharing with the Nzima or Krobo, and then they would go back to maybe their regions, and then, so it was a beautiful thing. And that's the first time that I saw Gome, but I heard it prior to that because my father had Wolome. You remember Wolome, the group Wolome?
Yeah.
Well, that's actually Big Boy. That's one of his drums, and I just found out.
No, I don't know the group. I know the name from
Wolome
the culture.
is one of the titles for the traditional Ga priests.
That's what I know.
Because they have different systems of spirituality. They have.
But there was a group here called Wolome?
Well, there's a group in Ghana which was one of the top high life groups back like in the 60s and 70s, and they did travel here. And they stayed with us for some time. Saka Akwe was affiliated with the...
Okay. I think they have the tape ready now. So if we can go directly with that, with the sound and everything, it would be great. There we go.
Is this live on
Sound.
Is this live or you editing it?
It's live. But we do these things and
up here.
No sound. No sound.
Listen, as long as the sound goes over the air, let it go. Oh, here we go. Okay. God.
That was a long time ago.
Long time ago?
Mm-hmm.
And your father was still here? Yeah.
Yeah, he was still here.
So you started early on this drum?
No, I started, when I came back in '79, my father was getting ready for, I think, the second or third Dance Africa. When I was in Africa, you know, I got a letter from him saying that he was talking to Chuck about something they were going to do Dance Africa. So when I got back in '79, I was telling him about this drum I saw where they play with their hands and their feet. He said, "Why didn't you bring one back?" I said, "I have no money." I said, "But you know, you probably could make one." He says, "Well, why don't you go make one?" So he gave me some money and went to the lumber yard.
And you got it.
And I got, I ended up making one too big. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I just fooled around on it, played it for me. He said, "Okay, you're going to get on stage with it." So the first time I performed it was at the Brooklyn Academy of Music.
This is the first?
Yeah, I never really played that drum during my first trip. I just hung out with people, you know, fooled around with it. I didn't really, you know, look into it then. It wasn't until some later years that I started to study with Big Boy and, you know, other people.
Does it have any significance since it's played with hands and feet, or is it just a rhythm?
It's not just, it's not, to me, I feel that, and what I've learned is that, like with the Ewe, with the Asante people, they're very proud of who they are.
That's right.
They're all African people, but they're proud. I'm an African American. I'm a black American. I grew up eating grits. And so I connect with Congo Square. I connect with Marie Laveau, you know. And I also connect with the Pan-African experience that I've been having, you know, as I go to Jamaica, or I'll go to Haiti, or I'll go to Trinidad. You know, we're pulling on all of that. That's who we are, you know, our experience.
That comes and it melds with the African basis.
Of course.
Yeah, so you have all of that.
I'm trying to, you know, grow on that, on the African fundamentals that I've been given on that drum.
That's right.
But I'm trying to,
to bring in all of
it has to be functional. So when I play, you know, I'm playing for my ancestors, the 40 million that was stolen. You know, that's what I'm playing for. I'm playing for my ancestors, you know, who have yet to have had a funeral.
Tell the truth. And that's why it's so important that we never forget them and always give them respect. I was told, and I read recently in one of the African newspapers, that in the celebration of their, what was it, the liberation, when Kwame Nkrumah led them out of colonialism, that they had this celebration every year, you know, I'm talking about, and that at the last one, they had an imam speak, they had a priest speak, and they cut out the libation. This is in the African news or whatever, and I'm saying, you know, that's a terrible thing that they're doing. You cannot do that. And the African countries have been so impressed by outside religions that it's a fight that has to be fought in order to bring back that respect for it. They have it, but they're not showing it the way they had previously done. So that's, you know, that's part of the struggle.
Yeah, I think, libation is very important.
Please.
And, you know, those people who move against us as African people know that. You know, they've studied us. They send in,
everything.
You know, they study us. And I think that once, you know, we start to get more of the knowledge into, because most of our people, we have to admit, are in the churches. You know, so, you know, I think that once, one of the complaints I've heard come from people who go to churches that they're not getting enough culture because the cultural people, the people with the information, won't go into the churches. But if you only have about like 10 or 15 or 20 people in this country who may be qualified to do something, how can they get to all of the churches? So I think we have to start to look at, you know, creating centers. I think that's what we're trying to do in terms of taking the Dinizulu Center for African Culture and Research on the next level, is use the technology to share with, you know, African people, not just on the continent, but throughout the diaspora.
Tell us about the Cultural Center, Dinizulu.
Well, Ames and Majawe was incorporated in 1971. And it's, you know, Mojawe comes from, you know, there's a Mojawe house amongst the God people. It's a very deep spiritual thing. My father had several friends who were Ga. One was G.W. Montefiore, who was a politician and also an international Olympic boxing referee. And he stayed in trouble, you know, with the government. He would wake up some mornings and his assets were frozen, and you know, he was considered to be like the mayor of Accra. But this is the man who, one of the people who introduced him to Nana Paribia, Latte. And so he took him around because he lived in Bubwashi, which is, you know, one of the suburbs in Accra. So my father took that name, you know, because he had that strong love of the Ga people, not just the Akan people. A lot of people think that my father was just dealing with Akan, but even Latte is not really Akan. It's Guan. It's Guan people, G-U-A-N. You know, and they speak a different language than Akan people, but they also speak tree, Aquapum tree, because they sit inside on the Aquapum Hills. You know, so the center was set up to teach people, to teach black people in particular, you know, about self. The use of dance and music was used extensively in the early days by my parents, because my mother, as you probably know, was a dancer with Asadada Dafora, who was the first African to put dance and music on the concert stage here. My father being a photographer, he saw her, they met, you know, and they formed that dance company. You know, he had a production eye, and she came in with other of her colleagues, Esther Roll, who was also
I have pictures of Esther
dancer,
Roll with them.
Mickey Newby, Zebedee Collins, Elaine Beener, Zebedee. And, you know, the company grew and grew and grew.
Let's put a pin on it for a minute. You said that Asadada Dafora was the first who had brought African dance onto like a concert stage. People need to know that our dance was banished for years. We were forbidden to really dance our dance, and the drums were forbidden for years, except in Congo Place, and then after when the war was going on, then they stopped it even there. But our culture was so denounced. They knew it had power, but white people didn't know how to deal with it. It frightened them, but they wanted it at the same time, and they were stealing all the time. They were telling you it's no good. But Asadada Dafora was the first who really said, no, this is, I'm going to show this to people. I'm going to make our culture, put it back where it should be as on the first class basis.
He was a revolutionary.
Yeah.
You know, his work was very revolutionary.
That's right.
But he didn't do it alone. He had some other Africans from the continent, Moses Maim and Odak. And these people were some of the drummers, you know, who helped to introduce a very important system of drumming, the Ashiko drumming, which, you know, that first drum that Chief Bey got, my father gave it to him because my father got several. You know, when I write my book, I'm going to really put as much information in as possible. Right. But the drum, well, Chief Bey, and I interviewed him on video, studied with Ismay Andrews. That's his teacher. And he was proud of Ismay Andrews taught Chief Bey and his contemporary Joe Commodore, who was married to my Aunt Bert, my mother's older sister. And, you know, when you look at Joe Commodore, he was in a lot of those early Tarzan-type exploitive movies.
Yes, he was.
But he also was one of the main people with Bey and them who were at the African Room. If you know, that's a whole nother.
In Chicago, I was working at the Blue Angel, and he came there. We said, "Wow!" You know, I was just starting, and whoa, Joe, you know how big he was and everything.
That was
oh my
uncle.
God, these names you're pulling up, I haven't heard them, like Zebedee and
but
the others.
These are very powerful people, and the reason, you know, it's, you know, they don't want this information in the school systems. They don't want, you know, people have to understand that. There are people alive today. Yeah. You know, I'm connected to some of those people who are in their 80s. Jarbo's still alive. You know, he passed through the Dunham School. That's a principal, you know, dance captain and everything for the Dinizulu company for all these years. One of my mother's dance partners. And they have volumes of information. And you know, like a little sponge. You know, I grew up around
Thank
this.
God. That's your mission. That's one of your missions. Yeah.
But the thing is that there is, I believe, an effort out, particularly in the United States of America, to suppress Black America's role as pioneers in preserving African culture globally.
Yeah.
And that argument could easily be. We can go into.
You can back it up. You can prove that.
Very easily.
I have books that prove that.
When you look at Catherine Dunham's country, when you look at Pearl Primus, and a lot of these people are women.
Yes.
You know,
true.
when you look at their role, and you know, I mean, even when you look at how did Jeffrey Holdersworth end up being on 007, James Bond? You understand?
Yeah.
But that was a slick way of introducing Baron Samedi.
Baron Samedi.
You understand? Dealing with the ancestors. And a lot of this work that they were doing was right under the nose, right in Hollywood, you know, Dunham and all that.
But they did it for its theatricality.
That's what they did it for.
Yes.
Right.
But in the meantime, that was an opportunity for us to show that thing. But the thing is, you have to show it with the purpose, with the essence
we want to
of
see
it.
the
We
real.
have to do it.
But
we have to do that.
But you know, people are trying to eat.
I saw a program on Channel 21 or something, one of those, and it talked about another group of people in Broadway music. Broadway music. They gave us 2 seconds. They just said blacks had da 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 da.
And Broadway?
Yes. And I sat up. I was watching. I said, because I was waiting. That was it.
Well, Broadway's very exploitive.
Outrageous. Look at this new movie that's out where you see Tom, what is his name, and he's all ripped, and they're doing all of these movements and everything. And I'm saying, look at that. Every 15 or so years, they bring out some European man who's to take the stage, but they're all doing African movement. All of them. And yet, the style, Broadway would not have that style that they have had it not been for our people. Up in Harlem, at the Cotton Club and all those clubs where they used to come and watch and then go downtown. What was that white producer who had the girls with the Floridor hats on? And they would just style and walk. And he was a big Ziegfeld. And he was a big producer. They wanted to jazz it up, so they came to Harlem, and they had the sisters who were at the Cotton Club and the other clubs up here teach them. And the sister said, "Why don't you hire us to come?" And they said, "Well, no, we can't do that." So they got a little movement. The chorus line would not be the chorus line had it not been for black dancing in groups, how the sisters danced together. So they can't even go on the stage without us, without something from our culture. And yet they're just, whew.
Listen to this one. When I was a very young man, I was called in to work on a play called Storyville. It was on Congo Square. And guess who wrote the book? Toni Morrison. We were down the hall in the Michael Bennett building, opposite Katz. I used to go to lunch with people in Katz. We were all going to open together.
Right.
We were Broadway bound. We were in workshop. Workshop theater 6 weeks long.
Yes.
So I'm working there. Antonio Ferregas, Odetta, Joffrey, Carmen DeLavilla was working on the costumes. And I was asked to help to recreate the Congo Square scene because Satchmo's last international concert, that was another play I did. Anyway, Donald McHale was dealing with the choreography. And just the fact that Toni wrote this very, very interesting work, and she came over to me and she said, "Look, I like how you drum." And she gave me a gift of a little tiny drum and said, "Can you come up to my place anytime you want and play your drum while I write?"
Really?
And I was like, "Who's this older lady telling me?" Because I didn't
know who she was.
I didn't really know. My mother said, "Oh my God," But Donald McHale, people like Donald McHale, and when you look at their influences, they just tell you about what they've done to Jacob's Pillar or what they've done over at Carnegie Hall, not these works that never got off the ground because it was with Paramount. Paramount was paying us.
Was Pearl Reynolds in that show? Because
No,
I have
I
a
don't
picture of
remember.
her doing something with Donald McHale, and she got her hand on her hip, and it was something about street stories or something like that?
No, it wasn't that.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that I don't know what happened, but I believe sometimes these projects are worked on with the intent of them going, maybe let's say in Hollywood on Broadway. I worked on Rosewood with Wynton Marsalis. And we were flown out to Hollywood. We were out there for 13 days. John Singleton movie, you know, Boys in the Hood.
Yes, I remember.
Cassandra Wilson's on the date. Shirley Caesar's on it. Philip Wilson. It's about 20 or so of us. We're out there for about 13 days. Beautiful music. You know, flew out a lot of my instruments. It wasn't on the soundtrack. Look at Rosewood. I think John Williams or something was, because they said it was good. I heard, this is what I heard, it might be a rumor, that the music that Wynton came up with was too emotional and would have caused riots in the streets if it was played with the
While
film.
that film was shown.
You understand?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying
That's
is that
the usual thing.
sometimes
it's
we
like-
get hired, and I'm not into conspiracies, but sometimes we get hired.
They are.
Sometimes we get hired for one reason, and then nothing happens, and all it was a study or a feasibility experiment. You know,
Or they want to see how far you would go.
exactly. And then they can go and put their people on these things and get their Fulbrights and get their Ford and Rockefeller funding and write books to interpret who we are.
Once when I was with Dunham, we were in Lebanon, as a matter of fact. And Dunham did not get government sponsorship.
You were in Lebanon with Catherine Dunham?
Yeah. But our show, which had 48 people in it, the, what is it called, the place where the embassy, American Embassy.
Was that a State Department gig?
No, ours wasn't. Marge and Gower Champion were brought there by the State Department. And they came to Dunham and her manager and said, would you please delay your opening? 48 people had to be paid, had to be housed, but we're opening Marge and Gower Champion, and we want a big thing for them, while this little black company over here had to wait. They didn't do it. We still open. But we would go, as we went around the world, we would see instances like that. Or
What time period was this?
I joined Dunham in 50, I think it was 55. And the first one ended 58.
So was Lavinia still around? Lavinia Williams?
No, all of them had gone.
Okay.
That's why she brought in all these new crew. All of them. The woman who was married to the trumpet player. See, my mind is going. Frances Taylor. She had just left. Of course, Eartha Kitt had left.
Right?
Julie Robinson married to Belafonte. The others, they had all left. So I came from Chicago. There were people who came from San Francisco, and so that first tour, and we came back in '58 from Japan. But all of that time, there was that conflict. Mainly, it was because she had the nerve or the audacity to do a ballet which depicted a lynching. She did it before I joined the company. This was in...
What's the name of that ballet?
Southland. And
you see?
They never forgave her for that. And also...
You believe that's why she was punished?
That's one reason. I think that's the basic reason. She didn't get any more funding after that. And, that's the big... all the companies got funding. They get funding. The black companies get less usually than the other companies. Unless you're Alvin Ailey, then that's the one that's pushed now.
Oh, they were threatening him too at certain points
always,
in time.
Always. But our culture is used, abused, taken, and we are sort of pushed to the back. And I went to a concert at Lincoln Center once, and there was some of our famous tap dancers were up there, beautifully working out, and then one of the audience said, "Who invented tap dancing?" And the brother, because of the oppression, because of his gig, said, "Well, you know, the Indians got a lot of rhythm. You know, over in India, they got a lot of rhythm." And I said, "Brother, you know." So you're oppressed and you get afraid that you're going to lose your job and you deny your culture. And we have to stop that. But it only changes when the culture becomes so strong that it cannot be denied, and we have to claim it. Everybody else claims their culture.
Yeah.
They claim culture is not theirs.
Yeah.
It's ours, but they still claim it. So that's one reason why I was so pleased to see what you're doing, and then to invite you here, because you have had the strength to go deeply into the culture and bring it back.
Yeah, well, now
Not only that, but to create your center.
Well, I didn't create that center. My parents did, and you know, some of the other elders, many people worked on that center. Right now, we've been still for a few years. You know, we lost my mother,
Yes.
and two of my aunts, and you know, my uncle. You know, people who were on the board, Quayal, our teacher Bonfo, and then I was ill for a while because after I came off the road working with music, and now we're trying to restructure everything. So we have a new board of directors. It's been interesting because, you know, I'm not a business type of a person. You know, I just like I'm an artist. You know, ideas. But now I've been put in a position where I've had to start to study the back end. You know, every little part, or as many of the little parts as necessary in running, you know, an organization. And it's interesting, you know, the things that go on. So we're having a fundraiser. Right on the 30th of June, we have Anton Roney, who's coming out with his trio. We have Atiba Kwabena Wilson. These artists are all donating themselves. We have Sister Lewis bringing the Galifuna dancers out and singers. We have Nadia, who works for Destiny. She's going to come out and do some Yanvalu and Polygal and Dahomey.
And all of those things need to be explained. See, one of the separations is that our people look at it and they don't know what they're looking at. But if you explain how it relates to their lives, how the dance, the story, all of that relates. You know, and the God people just, you know, we're doing this, right? Remember doing this? It means unity, and we've been doing it for years. Doing this, what does it mean? I'm bringing you to me, I'm bringing you to me. What do? I embrace you or I throw you away. But we doing bits and pieces, but if we learn the full dance movement, then we won't be doing butts and joints dances. And our young people will get some respect, have fun. Oh, wow, you know, this.
I agree with you.
But your organization teaches dance, you teach culture, and that's what I'm hoping people, family, Ancestor House. Where's your center?
We're located at 115-62 Supton Boulevard in Jamaica, Queens, 11434. And if anyone wants to send in a check to donate, we're
contact number. Yeah, what's the phone number?
I don't know the phone number offhand, but it's 115-62 Supton Boulevard, Jamaica, New York. They can email Dinizulu Center at gmail.com. We're having a fundraiser on the 30th. On July the 14th, we're having an open house. Because we don't really have funding together now, we're trying to look for funding. You know, I'm learning, we're going for, you know, we're going around, I'm learning how to try to talk to politicians, you know.
You have to do it.
Yeah, and try to talk to this person and that person.
Right.
As Professor Smalls advised me the other day, look under every stone and, you know, try to see what's out there. We have fantastic teachers, you know, available and ready to teach at the center. People who have taught there before, and some who have not. But I think that on the 14th of July, we're going to have an open house, which is free to the public, because I'm very interested in trying to reach out to, we have a couple 100,000 people right in our immediate community who really don't know we've been there for over 30 years. You know, we have Baisley Project, we have 40 projects. That's one of our communities, you know. we have people all over the world, really. We've touched people all over, but I want to try to see if we can reach some of the people out, you know, right around us also, and introduce them. We have the paper trail exhibit, which we haven't yet launched. We have to finish that up, which is a forensic examination of the transatlantic, African Holocaust of enslavement.
Right.
You know, my mother studied with Professor John Henry Clark, and got a little degree at Hunter, and you know, I've been running around with some of our notorious thinkers, learning, you know, a little bit about, you know, what happened to us, and came to collecting different types of items.
Yeah, what I saw when I was there some years ago was amazing.
You know, we have to really launch that and then move it on, share it with others, and then get some other things up.
Perhaps if you made some inroads into the churches, talk to them about, you know, the culture and connect it with the struggle of our people and the strength of our people. They might, you know, go do some shows or something so they can know where you are and know that they're not going to see anything vulgar or crude. It's not there. It's not there, people. That's one thing I did like about Dunham. I had to tell somebody about that. Was that you didn't see any Tomming in that show. There were no bucking of the eyes and all of that show. It was culture. The grace and the classic culture was there because that's who we are. And if the churches need to know that, as opposed, now they're doing praise dancing in the churches, you know, all over.
When did that first come about, as far as you know, praise dancing? I was wondering about that. I haven't looked into that yet.
I'm not sure. I have a suspicion that I don't want to say until I really find out. But I think that it was done to bring youth back into the churches because there were just seniors in the churches and they needed something to bring young people back. So they started bringing a choreographer in, and then they did the dance, and now it's developed into something big. It's just a watered down modern. Well, I shouldn't say watered down, but it is kind of modern. It doesn't have any ethnic base to it, from what I have seen.
Well, maybe it'll lead to that. Maybe you know, once they get more exposed to, you know, or rid of. Some people may have a fear of, you know, this whole voodoo, you know, obia type of
They do in
thing.
the church.
Well, that's because they're not educated about.
That's
voodoo,
where you come in.
Vedu, you know, in Fon means spirit, peace, harmony. And, you know, obi is from a cola nut.
People are afraid of the word voodoo. They keep saying it as if it's a curse or something.
Well,
and they need to know what it is, what it means.
Well, those are the systems of healing that cured us and helped prevent us from getting cancers and different types of illness and all of that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And, you know, the people who enslaved us, had, you know, it took over our minds, you know, and actually were very successful in getting large amounts of our people to actually fear being African.
Do you mean that voodoo has something to do with the way we eating well?
Well, when I was talking to Biana Bello in Haiti, she was talking about how she prepares a certain pumpkin soup for Dessalines and the ancestors, and gives it out for free across the island. When we were in the Haitian bakery just last week, right in Jamaica, Queens, I was asking a lady, nice bakery right on Jamaica Avenue, and she said that she makes that pumpkin soup on the weekends too, and it is very nutritious for the body.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, when we go to the Caribbean and to Jamaica, they use that same pumpkin in certain dishes too. It's an indigenous food. It grows from the ground. Those types of foods are good for us.
But it has nothing to do with sticking pins in things. I mean,
oh, I think
you know, and I'm talking the religion
that's
has been turned into something so fearful.
No, I mean, you know, a lot of I can't be absolute because there's so much in Africa, but from what I do know, most of these people, our indigenous people, believe in one God and also believe that we interact with other living entities like trees, like rivers. We give respect for the ocean. The earth is sacred. It's Asasi Ya. That's a female She gives birth to food. She gives birth to all different types of things.
So you must treat her well.
We don't farm on Thursday, yes.
We
yeah.
have to bring this conversation to an end, but
Okay,
I'm so
I'm sorry.
pleased that, don't be sorry, I'm so glad that you're here. Give the name of the contact number again.
Okay, well, it's the Dinizulu Center for African Culture and Research at Ames and Mojave. The location is 115-62 Supton Boulevard, Jamaica, Queens.
And if you get in touch with me at Ancestor House, what's my CamilleYarbrough.com, Camille Yarbrough at gmail.com, I will put you in touch with this.
June 30th, come out. It's $15. We have a whole lineup.
Food and
we have food and all of that.
Entertainment. Thank you for being with us. I'll see you next week here at Ancestor House. Thank you, Kimati.
That's an hour?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that was by quick.
You got it.
We must learn and tell our story, heal the pain and raise the glory. Tell it. We must learn and tell our story, heal the pain and raise the glory. Tell it. Not to know the family story is bad. Not to want to know it is worse. But to pass on ignorance to someone is like passing on a curse, and it will curse you.